Well, good morning to you, good morning. It's, oh crikey, what day is it? I lose the plot with these things. It's the 14th of April 2022, St Tassac's Day. Yeah, more famously, of course, it's Maundy Thursday, the day that your vicar will offer to wash your feet for you. Yeah, make sure you got clean socks on before you go to church this evening. Isn't that quince tree just magnificent? I've had a little walk around this morning, and of course a lot of the plum trees, the flower has been killed by the frost. Yeah, not all of it, but most of it, which is a little bit, it's one of those things, you know, something that you have to live with. But the apple trees are now in blossom. Do you ever come across a story that is just fascinating? Yesterday afternoon, I was with some friends. This is all part of learning French. You spend time with French people who don't speak English, and you have to learn French. And one of the ladies there present, who is 79, some of you will say, goodness, that's old. Some of you will say, steady an old chap, that's the same as me. And some of you will say, oh, she's just a child. Yeah, she's 79, and we were talking about a mutual friend who has just become a great-grandmother at the age of only 76. And the granddaughter, the mother of the great-granddaughter, is having some troubles feeding the child. See these flowers there? Some of them are going to hang on, but a lot of them sadly aren't. Oh well. Yes, this granddaughter is having some troubles feeding the new great-granddaughter. And my friend, who is just 79, told this very long, complicated story that developed into a story about railway safety. I always find stories about railway safety sort of interesting. When this lady had her first child, who incidentally is now 57, she had absolutely no problem feeding this child. She was in a hospital. That was normal. Nothing odd about that. That was just the way things were when this particular man was born. And in the bed next to her was a young Spanish woman. Now, she did tell me this lady's name, but you know, despite being a mere child, I forget some of the details. And the Spanish lady was having trouble feeding her new son. So the nurse suggested that as my friend was having not merely no trouble feeding her son, but had a surplus. Any of you think this is a strange conversation to have in someone's kitchen between a gentleman of a certain age and a lady who is much older? It was a strange conversation. So it was agreed that both babies needed feeding, and one way and another, involving bottles and such likes, milk was provided for the child of the Spanish lady. Thus far, it's quite a sweet little story. Then it took a bit of a turn for the worse. The Spanish lady's husband would finish work and he would rush to the hospital to see his wife and his new son. No, that one's... And there was something strange about the railway station near the hospital, in that it's one of the few stations in France where the platform is a different height to a lot of the other platforms. And if any of you have caught trains in France, you will know that generally speaking, from the platform to the train will be a couple of steps up. Generally speaking, not always the case. And this gentleman was desperate to get to the hospital to visit his wife and child, and he fell as he jumped from the train that was still moving, and horribly he lost a leg and injured his other foot. Now, I don't know what we're supposed to take from this story. It's interesting. It tells us something about human nature, that if you've got a surplus of anything, you should be very pleased to share it with people who suffer a shortage. It also might tell us that rushing is never a good idea. Instead of visiting his wife and new son in the hospital, the gentleman, of course, was taken to hospital, needed surgery to save his life. You know, if you have your leg cut off by a train, it's potentially going to kill you. It didn't in this case, but it rather spoilt the gentleman's efforts to visit his wife and child, and of course caused all sorts of problems in the rest of his life. So there we are, strange little story, all in French. Proud to say that I understood the whole thing. Good to see that we've got gooseberries in the bushes. Yeah, strange stories. Anyway, on that, not sure quite, it's not really a joyous note, is it? It's a bit of a horrible story in some ways. On that note, I'm going to go and put the kettle on, and then I'm going to start the work of the day.